guys, we're in an epic week, right? Let me tell you why we're in a very epic week, and then I'll take some of your questions, right? So we all know what the macro landscape is, what we're dealing with in the macro landscape. So many very important things are coming together simultaneously at the same time. We have runaway inflation. Now, the stated inflation rate is 8.5%. We know that's a joke. It's closer to 20%, actually, and I believe it's going higher. I also believe that inflation is probably, heightened levels of inflation is probably here with us to stay. I think that that is partially by design because the United States is, in particular, in a great deal of debt. Their balance sheet is too high, but the debt has to be either taken care of through the heightening of the increase in taxes, which no one's going to vote, no one's going to approve that. Or the growth of the economy, but the growth of the economy is very difficult because of what's happening on the political landscape, on the geopolitical landscape. Economy sort of slowing down because of the supply chain issues. China's going into lockdown again, which is going to further exacerbate the supply chain issues. All of these things basically mean that there's a possibility of recession coming. And so we've got a scenario where inflation is out of control. All right, our Federal Reserve did a horrible job at staying in front of this. And as a matter of fact, in my opinion, they should really resign. It's that bad of a job, right? Because first inflation was transitory. Then it was inflation's good. And then it was, oh no, inflation is the fault of the greedy corporations. And then it was, now I think the rhetoric is inflation's Vladimir Putin's fault. So it's just this constant passing the buck, getting it wrong. But we've got runaway inflation. We've got a hawkish Fed because of the necessity of being hawkish, not because it's a good thing. We've got supply chain issues applying additional pressure to prices. We've got a slowing economy. We've got a pullback on quantitative easing. We've got a geopolitical war that's going on that is further adding to the scarcity of certain things, which is adding additional price. So all of this uncertainty, on top of that, guys, we've got a risk-off market environment as a result of all of that that is extraordinarily punishing to any small thing that's off. So if a company like Netflix is off by one or two things, it gets cut, by 30, 40%. It's not a 15% haircut. It's not an 8% haircut. It's a 30, 40, 50% haircut. And so we're probably in one of the most important weeks of this quarter's earnings season, right? Because we've got, I think, Microsoft's earnings coming up. We've got Apple's earnings coming up. We've got Google's earnings coming up. We've got Airbnb's earnings coming up. We've got Meta's earnings coming up, formerly known as Facebook. We've got some of the oil companies going up, which is going to be interesting, Exxon, Chevron. We've got Airbnb's earnings coming up. We've got some really powerhouse earnings coming up this week, which I think is going to set the tone for whether the market becomes more risk off or the market just sort of feels based on these numbers that, everything is already priced in, that the market's declined far enough for it to have priced in all future interest rate hikes by the Fed, and the market's anticipated the slowing down of the economy already appropriately, so we don't have to become more risk off at this point. So it's going to be interesting. In addition to why that's interesting is that, as we know, Bitcoin has specifically had a very high correlation with the NASDAQ in particular. And so the NASDAQ has been a leader, and sometimes Bitcoin has been a leader, and it doesn't really matter which one is which. It started off with Bitcoin leading the pack and the NASDAQ following. Now it seems like they're in lockstep, although that linking is starting to break down very, very gradually. Marginal breakdown, but the breakdown or the dislinking of the correlation between Bitcoin's activity and the NASDAQ's activity is starting to break. Now, over time, Bitcoin has almost a zero, has a very low correlation to the stock market, has a very low correlation. Over time, it's an inflation hedge. Over time, it has practically zero correlation. In short periods of time, it can link on. But over time, it has almost a zero. And this is what a lot of people, I think, miss about Bitcoin. So it's just going to be a fascinating week, big earnings week. We've still got a lot of stuff happening on the geopolitical front. What else? We've got New York potentially banning proof of work mining. We've got the second nation in the entire world having just adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. It's so much going on. And I just finished my 3-day live trading camp. Boom. All right. So guys, exciting times, guys. Exciting times. We're watching history unfold ahead of itself. No one's really been here. We're in unprecedented territory, guys. No one's been here. We've read about these things. I've studied these things. I've never seen a scenario where all of these things are coming together at the same time. I mean, I barely know a high inflationary period. I was too little back in the 70s to really wrap my hands around that in the early to mid 1970s. I remember, but I've never really truly as an adult experienced that. So interesting times.